And Melin, welcome back to Women's Wellness Radio.
Hey, thanks, Bridgit. How's it going?
Good, good. You and I were just talking and catching up about how things have been going so far in our Restore Your Radiance program, and also like what the future may hold, which may include some more resources for practitioners, which is cool. But yeah, I invited you on today just to kind of talk about how it's been going so far and what we've been learning now that we've been interacting with this lovely group of women we've had. So I wonder if you could start it out with talking about what your role is in our Restore Your Radiance program and how you're serving our clients.
Yeah, so I guess serve as, in some way, Bridgit and I are co-collaborating here as practitioners working with these women who are coming through the program, but I kind of serve in more of the kind of detailed clinical side of things, right? So sort of doing the initial intake and really getting a sense of what the history is and what the person is up against, what they're looking to achieve, what the patterns are that seem to be appearing in their history of symptoms, so that I can really kind of assess and gauge, okay, it seems like we should investigate X, Y, and Z, and get some baseline information in terms of what labs we run and what kind of information we want to try to pull out first, and then putting together kind of more detailed, personalized protocols for those people and doing the follow-ups. And then sometimes it's, we get some lab results back and we go, okay, this didn't lead us where I thought it would, or this is pointing over here and we should really investigate further there. And then also doing follow-up troubleshooting and ongoing support as we go through the rest of the program. So that's kind of my role in a nutshell, but there's a lot more to it also.
Sure. Yeah, and every case is different, and we're going to talk a little bit later about some of the patterns we see, and maybe we could kind of pick into some of the interesting things that have come up, in your discoveries so far. But yeah, I know I think maybe a couple people you ran a stool test and then later ran a SIBO test. Is that right?
Yeah. It's been interesting because through this work with some of these clients and then some other things I'd been seeing elsewhere, I started seeing these patterns that were showing up on stool tests that really started pointing me in the direction of SIBO, and been finding that pretty much across the board with those people showing those kinds of patterns on stool tests. So
yeah, it's really interesting, and we can talk more about this, but this is a great example of why lab testing is so worthwhile, because you can have digestive symptoms and not know where they're coming from and be trying all sorts of diets and stuff and still not, all you end up with is a super restrictive diet, which I know some of the people in our program started on. Or you could not be really having digestive complaints, but other hormonal complaints. And it turns out there's more going on in your digestive tract than you realize. So yeah, it's really the wonderful part of functional medicine. I'm so thankful to have you to be the clinician, because I get to do what I think is the fun part. You're in your zone of genius. I'm in my zone of genius. We all have our own skills, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah. So my role is I usually do the SPARK case review, which is the initial session to decide if the person is ready to come into the program, where I'll kind of give them a sense of what labs we might run based on what I'm hearing. But you're the final, decision maker on that. And yeah, we just talk about their case, what they've tried so far. For many of our women in the program, many of them have, I'd say probably all of them have gone the conventional approach, and then the natural approach to some extent or the other. Either do it yourself natural approach, or actually have seen, a few different naturopaths or tried different things and still haven't resolved their issue. So we talk about that. And then if they do decide to enroll, if we decide it's a good fit, then they see you next for that in-depth consultation, like we said. And then I do the next consultation, which is we call DLM, Diet, Lifestyle, Mindset, which, is really a different session for everyone, which is a lot of fun. So some people I really heavily focus on the diet because I think it's tough in our culture. There's so many concepts about what a healthy diet is and what to follow. And I'm finding that there's some confusion there with some people, where they're trying to eat healthy, but the quality of food is not as good as it could be, or the carb content is too high, or it's too processed. And there's some people in our program, as you know, who are eating like amazing, there's some great chef, like they could be teaching it. So you can be on that level of good nutrition and still have an issue, which is where you come in with the gut infections and hormone imbalances. So it's different. Those people, I'm not riding them too much, maybe little tweaks. So it's just different for every case. And then, as you mentioned, sometimes I talk to people about chemicals and detox and just like natural ways to detox every day. We do have a couple of people in the program who have possible mold, and that's kind of an expertise for me that we talk about detoxing that. And then lifestyle, I've talked about all sorts of things. I've talked about marriages and jobs and stressors. Often, the stressors just drag on. And if you don't really have anyone to talk it out with, like, okay, what do I do about this emotional stressor I'm having? You just carry it around and it's a burden to your health. So, we talk about all sorts of things. We've talked about cleaning out clutter out of your house. We've talked about getting your husband to understand your chronic illness. There's a lot of challenges. So, it's really fun. And then the other aspect I'd say that I do 2 sessions in the course with people, is once they get going with you and have to do a protocol, it can be frustrating, and that's where I drop in to try to smooth it over. There's a lot of pills to take, and some are an empty stomach, some are with food, some are making you feel good. So that's often the point where people hit like a little roadblock in the program. So I think it's important to just know, like, it's going to happen. It's happening for pretty much everyone on some level, and it's nobody's fault. It's just change is hard. Remembering all these pills is hard. We have made a handout now for like keeping track of all your pills. But you're not going to get rid of, a parasite just taking your pills every few days when you feel like it. So it's important. Exactly. So sometimes I'm doing some care around that. But we've talked about all sorts of things in the sessions, which has been really rewarding for me, and hopefully rewarding for our ladies as well.
And you just made me think about when you're talking about people hitting roadblocks or struggles, not just with supplements, but I'm thinking about one of our clients in particular who she'd made some good changes to her diet and had been trying to follow through on those, but she's one who struggles with her diet. And she'd really been trying to adhere for a period of a few weeks, and then she just went off the rails over one weekend. And by Monday morning, she was saying, oh, well, I was thinking that everything was, the changes were so small and not really noticeable, and feeling frustrated about that. But then when she went back to eating for one day, like she had before she made those changes, the next day she paid for it, and she could see how significant the changes had been
in symptoms.
Immediately, because she was like, oh, this was how I was actually feeling before. So sometimes the changes appear incremental and don't seem as dramatic as they are until you're, suddenly faced with a realization of, oh my gosh, this is how far I've come, and even in a short period of time.
It's funny how our brains do that, and you might know more about the psychology. Like, say you sprain your ankle and you're limping around. Well, when you're walking normally again, you don't think about, oh, I'm walking normally again. You don't think about it. It's just normal. You think about it when it's hard. So sometimes you do forget your wins, and it's nice to have a coach to say, and I've become much more sympathetic to how slow it can go after my own health experience. So it's like, I don't feel personally responsible if the changes are small, because I know that that's kind of how it works sometimes, and it's up and down. So if we can say, okay, you had a bad week this week, but last week you had a good week, and maybe tomorrow will be a good day.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's true. And I think that's where part of what you're doing is really offering a nice piece to it all too, is sort of keeping that perspective of that this is a process that requires patience, and how do you work with yourself from an emotional, mental perspective that allows for approaching each day as a new day, and that some of those days are going to be better and some of those days are going to be worse, but to hold the course nonetheless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really like a team approach, which I really enjoy, between you and me and the client and their support people. So it's no one person's responsibility. It's sort of on everyone, which, yeah, is great. So I wanted to talk in a minute about like the health patterns we see, but maybe let's first just talk about like, what do we see in common with these ladies? Like, what's their profile?
Yeah.
Let's profile them.
Yeah. I would say, it's been so great, this process of working with this group of women we've been working with. For the most part, we have people who have come into the program, these really sharp, dynamic, bright, educated women, which it's just such a joy to sort of interact with that, of course, but they're coming in and they kind of know where they're at, they know where their limitations are, and they know what they're trying to achieve with us. Some of them are even health coaches themselves, but they realize their boundaries of knowledge and where those limitations are and what they've been able to do for themselves. As I think about one of our clients who's a health coach, you talked about being very dialed in on her diet. She was doing everything perfectly that she learned to do, but there's this missing piece, and sometimes we just need other people to help us round out that missing piece, or other people with additional knowledge or knowledge in areas we don't have. And so that's been really fun to be on the collaborative side of that. And a lot of them, just really, knowledgeable in a lot of areas, very professional. We've got lawyers, we've got
teachers. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of, you name it, we've got it in this group, it seems like.
Yeah, we also have a couple homemakers raising kids at home and not working. So I really have appreciated like the diversity. We have a number of expats, Americans living outside of the US, which has been really interesting. It does have a little bit of challenge at times with dealing with the labs and getting the supplements, but we're definitely trying to navigate that for people the best we can. And I think it's mostly gone well. And people usually living outside the country kind of know how to work the system to get what they need, which is good. I'm trying to think what else I've noticed. Definitely a lot of curiosity, right? Like, just wanting answers, and some people are asking us. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, like some data junkies, right? And that's one of the things that's really fun. We have a couple clients who they just want to know what's going on. There's some people who they've been 10, 12, 15 years not feeling well. And they finally feel like they have a resource that might be able to help them find some of the answers to that. Thinking about one woman that we have who, have been working with naturopathic doctors and everything, but just had never really had the right testing. And so it was like they were just throwing darts at the wall to see what would work, and nothing really did. And now she has access to get all this information, and she just loves being able to see, okay, here's what's going on here. Here's what's going on here. And she's gotten so much benefit from that, in addition to being able to kind of cater what it is that she's doing, instead of just saying, this sounds like this, let's try this and see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know if we're thinking of the same person. It's kind of funny, but I'm thinking of someone who I asked you, how'd you feel when you got your test results? She said, I felt so relieved. I felt so happy to finally know. And I just told her, you look a lot different than when we did our spark. You just look more grounded. You look happier. Again, it's like not like everything changes at once. But just the way she was interacting with the world, I think even just she had more confidence, like knowing what she was dealing with. Sometimes people like literally feel like I'm going crazy. I'm all alone here. I don't feel well, and no one gets it. No one knows what to do with me. And it's a very lonely feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, some people just feel like they can't function properly. They can't make dinner. They can't
Right.
just do things.
And that's, I mean, I think that's hard for everybody. And I think it's particularly hard for women who are educated and not, and kind of, they feel like, I know what I'm supposed to do. I know how to do all of these things, but I can't do them anymore. They can't access those resources in themselves anymore or whatever, because they've been ill. And there is definitely that piece, especially if you're dealing with chronic illness for the long term, where other people or struggle to understand what that's about. And I think having other people to just sort of validate your experience, say you're not crazy, there are other things going on and we're going to help you find that. That's been like when you say people, this one woman was relieved to see her test results, because it's validating to, okay, I'm not just off my rocker in my head, even though mental emotional stuff I think is just as real as any of the other things that you might be dealing with, but that, there is a validating piece to all of that in seeing the lab work.
Yeah. Well, maybe this is a good time to talk about the patterns we've seen, which we summed up in basically 3 words: hormones, gut, thyroid.
Yeah. Hormones, gut, thyroid. Yeah.
And not everyone is thyroid. I guess I feel like I've seen a lot of borderline thyroid,
yeah.
A lot of borderline, although I know we just enrolled a new woman who is really high antibodies. So I think we'll see more. We just enrolled 2 thyroid cases. So yeah, we've got a couple of people on thyroid medications.
Several.
Yeah. And then, just a lot of that borderline, which I think you've given me some insight to. You said once something like, that the thyroid will even out when the other things are cleared up, probably.
A lot of times it can, not 100% of the time, but if you see if you see thyroid antibodies, 10, 11, 20, you start to get a little bit concerned. But then if you also see, that somebody is severely gluten intolerant or something, and they're putting gluten in their face every day, and like that's sometimes a real trigger for thyroid antibodies for some people. So there are times when or certain types of gut bacteria,
and we can
clear that up, the antibody load starts to resolve. So,
you can see on the stool test the what is it, the kind of the gluten, what do they call it?
Anti-gliadin IgA.
Okay. That's interesting. People don't always want to see that and know that their body's reacting to gluten. But when you see it right there in writing, it makes the choice, I don't know, the choice a little bit more, what's the word? Just powerful. Like, it's like, there's something going on there, and
it's in your control.
It's impactful. Yeah.
You want it to be or not.
I hope we get this podcast up before our webinar, but even if we don't, you can always, I'll share the link, and you can access the replay even if you missed the live webinar. But you and I will do a webinar on a stool test and a hormone test again. We did this in the fall or the spring, but now we have a lot of new ladies, so we'll do it again. So if you're like, oh, I want to know what happens on a stool test, you can see it. It's pretty cool. And same with the hormone test. So we'll go over those 2 tests. So thyroid blood is a blood test that often people could run with their doctor potentially. I just wrote a blog about kind of the pros and cons of that. You can't ask your doctor to run a bunch of things for someone else, for another practitioner. It's just sort of, it's not in alignment. But if they are in alignment with some things that we're investigating and you want to ask them, sometimes that works out great. If not, if you don't want to deal with it, or you don't really have a primary care person that you're working with, you can also get these labs self-ordered. So that makes it pretty easy. We mentioned that we started seeing some SIBO, we're seeing some gut issue. Would you say 100% of our clients are having some gut issues?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Even if that wasn't the primary complaint that they came, in with. Yeah.
I think so too. And it's just a point I want to bring up, that even if you're saying, oh, well, I'm going through menopause and my hormones are driving me crazy, or I can't get pregnant and I'm frustrated, it's often the gut piece that needs to be addressed. It's just such a huge system to take in information and our modern world's information. There's just so much going on in there, and there's stress, which, you know, thins the gut barrier, and there's GMO foods, and it's just such an area that's just ripe for issues. So but I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, I think everybody everybody had that.
One thing that's been really interesting to me, one of the newer markers on the gut test that we've been running, the stool test that we've been running, is that beta-glucuronidase marker, which we'll talk about during the webinar. But one of the things that, if it starts to get elevated, that can start to drive elevations of estrogen levels. And so you can wind up with high levels of circulating estrogen when that's high, and that's totally related to dysbiotic gut bacteria. So you might not experience it in the gut, you might be experiencing it as symptoms of estrogen dominance, but being driven by gut imbalances. Yeah. And that can lead to infertility or hot flashes, or, you know, whatever, depending upon your particular fluctuations in hormones throughout the month and everything.
Yeah. You know, it's an investment to find out what's going on in your gut there, but it's and then the protocol is some work, but you know, it's not going to go away on its own, really. It's just not going to, once that pattern is set up. It's, you know, so yeah. So those are the patterns we see. And then we talked a little bit about how your doctor may run some labs for you. We have a couple clients and doing some fertility treatment, and one of our clients started to have migraines, and, you know, is getting some tests run and had to do some medication. So you wanted to talk a bit about how we interact with other practitioners and doctors.
Yeah. Well, I think primarily I just wanted to say that, you know, that's something that we're willing to navigate and work with. And so our approach is not immediately to say, okay, you have to give up everything that you're doing with your doctor. You need to jump full ship into doing everything in a natural, holistic way, or like, we definitely see the place for the need sometimes for medication, the need for more traditional medical system. And, you know, even so far as, you know, you mentioned IVF, and that we have a couple clients going through fertility treatments and that kind of thing. And that, you know, that really has a place in the work that we're doing, and that we can work alongside of that. So you don't have to feel like, oh, well, I already know I want to do fertility treatments in the fall. I mean, we might say to you, hey, you might want to wait till your body's a little bit healthier or something like that. But that we're not wholesale, like, no, you have to get pregnant naturally or you don't get pregnant at all, or whatever it may be. You know, that there's definitely that room for collaboration. And even to the extent, I mean, this hasn't happened with any of the women we're working with right now, but I have before with clients interacted with their doctors about what it is that I'm doing and what it is that they're doing, and where we can meet in the middle and what's really going to be most effective for the client. So, I mean, that has its own tricks, of course, but it's something that we could also do if it was necessary in a given case. So.
Yeah. Again, like what I mentioned earlier, you know, you can't ask your doctor to do something that's sort of not their role. The extent to which we can all understand each other can be limited, you know. So I did a lot of work in fertility, so I'm pretty good at reading all those lab reports and knowing those procedures. But I don't know other procedures. You know, I don't know much about hysterectomy options, or, you know, there's things I don't know in their world, in their language, and there's certainly things that they don't know in our world and language. So yeah, we're very open, I guess we can say. We're called Women's Wellness Collaborative. We better be we better be open. I would say for me, tell me if you agree with this, Anna, I just would like to have clients who are invested in what we do, even if they're exploring other things. You know, we want clients to be in a place where they're ready to do the work with us and follow through, because I think as much as people want, like I want results for our clients. Like I want them to say like, I came in X state and I'm leaving in Y state, and we can't do it all. They have to do it. They have to take the supplements, go to bed early, do whatever it is that they need to do. And that can be, can be hard at times, but those little hard moments pass, those little moments pass where you're like, I'm at a party and I'm not having wine and I'm feeling this feeling, I feel you're doing something different. You feel a little lost. You feel like you're not fitting in, but that passes. And then, your symptoms change finally. So, we want people who are invested, because we definitely want to invest in you as a client.
Right.
Anything else you feel like we're sort of seeking or we're finding that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to maybe piggyback off of that a little bit and maybe just express, as Bridgit and I have been working together through this and worked with a number of women now, and sort of looking at what are the options that we want to offer to you out there, what kind of packages do we want to make available, and really kind of coming back to a decision to offer this as a package service, right? Where we have these multiple sessions that we're providing. And we're doing that for a reason, because sometimes, you can go out there and you can have a lab test run and maybe have somebody interpret it and say, here, do X, Y, and Z. But if there's not that kind of follow-up, so often what we've both encountered is that people aren't getting the results that they need from that. And so it's easy to walk away from the approach. But what we're trying to offer is something that can really provide value to you if you really do the work and if you really invest in the follow-through with us through these sessions that we're offering. So
yeah, the fun part is getting your labs run, right? The fun part is, and I found this as I came out of functional diagnostic nutrition school, where you were my mentor. We have to run some test labs on people. And so I thought, I can run your labs, and I got some people to do it, but most of them did not do anything based on, because I would give them a protocol too. And then they'd be like, I'm good. I just, they're curious. It's like getting your fortune read or your horse. It's like, I'm curious about myself. Great. That's awesome. But you have to actually do stuff afterwards. So we do it as a package, and it's not a huge, you and I were talking about, it's not a huge amount of sessions. It's enough to get you through 6 months, and you can make a lot of progress in 6 months. And then if you want to continue, or you just want to check in with us, once a year, or when something's going, I just had someone reach out to me because she's postpartum and wanted a session. Like once you're in, you can reappear as you want or continue as you want. So we don't make it so many that it's like bogs you down, but it's like enough to get you going and get you some results, which is, we have some people graduating now, so to speak, who like don't really need us, and some are still doing a protocol because they had to get a second round of tests and find out more stuff. So some people will continue a bit, but so I should just mention, because I didn't give it a great introduction. So this program is sort of our advanced program for people who are ready to run lab tests and have some frustrating things they haven't been able to fix, usually have tried other things. We may end up doing like a simpler version. It's like, I didn't even tell you this. It's like kind of a starter version without labs for people who maybe aren't ready for all that yet, but still are attracted to our style and what we do. But in this round, which is going through September 6th, we're enrolling, this is what we're doing, this Restore Your Radiance program, which starts with the Spark case review I mentioned earlier. It's, it's just on an online video call or the phone, and it does have like a small fee, but you can apply that towards a program if you continue to go. There's been just a couple people that I've said, I don't think it's the right program for you, but if I do find that, I'll give a lot of resources, and maybe this practitioner would be better for you. This step would be better for you. So we want to make sure that you get some value out of it. I don't think anyone's been disappointed with those sessions. We definitely dig in to your case. It's not us talking to you about the program. It's us evaluating your case. So yeah, I think they're a lot of fun. And if it sounds like a program you may be interested in as you're listening to this or watching it, we'd love to have you and love to have you in this round of ladies. And yeah, you don't have to be sure of anything. You just have to be, if you want to have a conversation, you can come have it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. So thanks for everyone watching and listening. And again, we're doing a webinar on this lab testing, and I'll link to that in the show notes and the blog notes. And if you missed it live, you can watch it recorded as well. So thanks, Anne, for coming back on.
My pleasure. Thank you, Bridget.